The day of the imperial archery tournament, I did something unforgivable. I watched Kim Tae-jin draw his bow, his form perfect against the autumn sky, and I whispered a lie to the stablemaster. General Kim requests his lucky arrows, the ones with the red fletching. He says the tournament arrows feel unbalanced. The stablemaster, eager to please a rising military star, rushed to make the switch. Those red-fletched arrows were beautiful, exquisite even. They were also subtly warped, imperceptible to the eye, but enough to throw off a shot by mere inches, inches that would cost Tae-jin everything. I told myself I was protecting him. The tournament was a trap, wasn't it? A beautiful, glittering trap set by Crown Princess Se-yeon to find herself a consort. Any unmarried nobleman was eligible, and the winner would be honored with her hand in marriage. But I was wrong. So catastrophically, heartbreakingly wrong. Tae-jin's final arrow veered left, missing the center mark by a finger's width. The crowd gasped. He'd been leading the entire competition, and now he'd placed second. The victory went to Jung Min-ho, a soft-spoken cavalry captain I barely knew. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt the first cold finger of dread trace down my spine. Tae-jin married me 3 months later. Our wedding was beautiful. Lanterns floating on the river, musicians playing traditional melodies, my crimson wedding hanbok embroidered with peonies and phoenixes. He smiled at me throughout the ceremony, his hand warm and steady in mine. "I'm glad it's you," he whispered during the ceremonial bows. "I'd rather have you than any princess, any position, any glory." I believed him. Heaven help me, I believed every word. We built a life together in his modest compound. He was a minor general, 5th rank in the military hierarchy, respectable but not powerful. We had enough. We were happy. Or so I thought. Every night he held me close. Every morning he kissed my forehead before leaving for the garrison. We laughed together, planned for children, grew vegetables in our small garden. When other military wives gossiped about how I'd trapped General Kim, how he could have been the crown princess's consort if not for that one unlucky arrow, I dismissed them. Fortune favors those meant to be together, I'd say, echoing Tae-jin's own words from our wedding night. 3 years of this, 3 years of what I thought was love. Then my father, Minister Park, was arrested for treason. The charges were fabricated, I knew it in my bones. My father was many things, but a traitor wasn't one of them. He'd spoken too freely at court, questioned the wrong people, made enemies of powerful ministers who served the crown prince's faction. The sentence was swift and brutal. Execution for my father, mother, and younger brother. Our entire family line would be extinguished, our property seized, our name erased from the records. I had one hope, one single thread to grasp. Tae-jin had connections through his military service. He'd once saved the life of Commander Yoon, who owed him a blood debt. If Tae-jin petitioned on our behalf, if he called in that favor, perhaps my family could be exiled instead of executed. Perhaps we could survive this. I found him in his study, staring out at the garden we'd planted together. "Tae-jin," I said, my voice breaking, "please, I know what I'm asking is difficult, but my father—" His laugh cut me off. Cold, bitter, nothing like the warm sounds I'd grown to love. "Your father?" He turned to face me, and the expression in his eyes made me stumble back. Why should I lift a finger for your father? Why should I risk my position, my reputation, my future for the Park family? "Because I'm your wife, because you love me." "Love you?" His lips curled into something cruel. "Oh, Hae-jin, sweet, foolish Hae-jin, do you know what you cost me?" He advanced on me, and I backed against the wall. His hand shot out, wrapping around my throat. Not squeezing, just holding me in place like a butterfly pinned to a board. "That archery tournament," he said softly, his breath hot against my face, I was winning. Do you understand? I was about to become the crown princess's consort. Do you know what that means? Power, influence, a direct line to the throne. I could have been someone. I could have mattered. My heart stopped. You wanted that? Wanted it? He laughed again, the sound jagged and wrong. I spent years positioning myself for that opportunity, years of cultivating the right connections, perfecting my skills, making myself the ideal candidate. And then, on the day that mattered most, my lucky arrows, the ones I'd commissioned specifically for that tournament, somehow got switched. His grip tightened just slightly, not enough to hurt, but enough to terrify. I've spent 3 years wondering how it happened, 3 years watching Jung Min-ho rise through the ranks as the crown princess's favored consort, while I stagnated as a 5th-rank general. 3 years married to you, pretending I didn't hate every moment of it. Tears streamed down my face. The arrows, Taejin, I only thought... You thought. His eyes widened with mock surprise. You thought. You sabotaged my entire future because you thought? Because you wanted to keep me for yourself like some precious toy? I was trying to protect you, I sobbed. Being a consort in this dynasty, it means giving up your military career, giving up your freedom. It means power, he roared, finally releasing my throat to slam his fist against the wall beside my head. It means standing beside the future empress. It means my family name living on in history, and you took that from me because you couldn't bear the thought of sharing me with royalty. He stepped back, straightening his robes with shaking hands. Your father's execution is in 3 days, he said, his voice flat now, empty. I won't petition for mercy. In fact, I'll make sure Commander Yoon knows I support the decision. The Park family allied themselves with the wrong faction, and they'll pay the price for it, just like I've paid the price for your meddling. Taejin, please! Get out of my sight. I left the study on trembling legs. That night I lay alone in our bedchamber, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. 3 days later, I watched from a distance as my father, mother, and 12-year-old brother were executed in the public square. Taejin stood among the military officials observing the sentence, his face impassive. I was spared only because I'd married into the Kim family before the charges were brought. But I was tainted now, the daughter of a traitor. The other military wives stopped visiting. Servants whispered behind their hands. Taejin moved to a different chamber and never touched me again. 2 months after my family's execution, I was found in the garden, cold and still, a cup of poisoned tea overturned beside me. The official record said I'd taken my own life out of shame. Taejin didn't even attend my funeral. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in my family's compound, sunlight streaming through the window, my mother's voice calling me for breakfast. I looked down at my hands, young, unmarred, wearing the simple jade ring my father had given me for my 17th birthday. My 17th birthday? The week before the imperial archery tournament. I stumbled to the bronze mirror in my chamber, staring at my reflection. The face looking back was my own, but younger, softer, with eyes that hadn't yet witnessed betrayal and death. A dream? Madness? Or something else entirely? Hey, Jim! My younger brother, Park Jae-sung, burst into my room, all gangly limbs and bright smile. Mother says if you don't come down soon, she'll give your breakfast to me. I stared at him, alive, laughing, whole, and burst into tears. Nuna? His smile faded into concern. What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? A nightmare. Yes, a 3-year nightmare that had somehow, impossibly released me.
or given me a second chance.
This time, I knew the truth. This time, I wouldn't save Taejin from his ambitions. This time, I'd give him exactly what he wanted. Let's see how he enjoys his gilded cage. The day of the tournament dawned clear and bright. I arrived at the palace grounds with my parents, taking my place in the viewing pavilion reserved for noble families. Crown Princess Seon sat in the center, flanked by her ladies-in-waiting, looking radiant in royal purple silk. I'd met her a few times at court functions. She was intelligent, cultured, and utterly devoted to Confucian propriety. She'd also, I knew from bitter experience, insisted on this tournament format for selecting her consort. She wanted a man of martial prowess, someone who could complement her refined nature. What she'd get was a man who wanted power and had no idea what the position would cost him. The archers assembled on the field, each representing different military units and noble families. Taejin stood tall among them, his bow already in hand, confidence radiating from every line of his body. Across the field, I spotted Jung Min-ho preparing his equipment. He was methodical, careful, his movements economical and precise. In my previous life, he'd won by default when Taejin's final arrows went astray. This time, fate would play out as it was meant to. The competition began. Arrow after arrow found their marks. Taejin was magnificent. I could admit that even now. Each shot was perfect, powerful, a display of skill honed through years of dedicated practice. Jung Min-ho was quieter, less flashy, but equally skilled. As the rounds progressed, it became clear these two were the frontrunners. During the break between rounds, I noticed Jung Min-ho standing alone near the weapons tent. He looked uncomfortable, out of place among the preening nobles who were clearly angling for the crown princess's attention. I approached him carefully. "Captain Jung," I said with a respectful bow, "you're shooting beautifully today." He looked startled, then returned the bow. "Lady Park, thank you, though I suspect General Kim will take the victory." Perhaps. I hesitated, then made a decision that could save this man's life. "Captain, may I be bold and ask you something?" "Of course." "This tournament," I chose my words carefully, "do you know what the prize is for the winner?" His brow furrowed. "Glory? Recognition? I assumed the Empress would grant a promotion or land. The winner becomes the crown princess's consort." The color drained from his face. "What?" "It's meant to be a secret, known only to those with the right connections. The crown princess wished to choose her own husband from among the empire's finest warriors. The winner will be granted the highest honor, marriage to the imperial family." Jung Min-ho's hand tightened on his bow. I had no idea." "Most don't, but I thought you should know." I met his eyes steadily. "For a consort in our dynasty, marriage means the end of military service. No more battlefield commands, no more campaigns. You'd live in the palace, attend court functions, manage the crown princess's household affairs. A life of comfort and prestige, certainly, but not a life for a soldier," he finished quietly. "No, not for someone who loves the field as you clearly do." I could see the war playing out in his expression. Honor versus freedom, glory versus purpose. "Why tell me this?" he asked finally. "Because I strike you as a good man, Captain Jung, and good men deserve to make choices with full knowledge of the consequences." I bowed again and walked away, leaving him to wrestle with his decision. The final round began. Taejin shot first, and his arrows flew true. Perfect score, perfect form, perfect execution. The crowd roared its approval. Jung Min-ho stepped up next. His hands were steady, but I could see the hesitation in his stance. His first arrow hit slightly off-center. His second veered right. By the third shot, it was clear he was deliberately missing. The announcer's voice rang across the grounds. "First place, General Kim Tae-jin." Taejin's face lit up with triumph. He strode forward to kneel before the viewing pavilion, his head held high with barely concealed ambition. I watched from my seat as the imperial eunuch cleared his throat and began to read. By the grace of heaven and the will of the Empress, General Kim Tae-jin is hereby appointed as consort to Crown Princess Se-yeon. You shall uphold the dignity of your position, harmony in the imperial household, and serve with loyalty and devotion, by imperial decree. The murmur of shock rippled through the crowd. Many of the nobles hadn't known the true purpose of the tournament. I saw fathers pale with relief that their sons hadn't won, saw young men exchange horrified glances. But Taejin looked ecstatic. He probably thought this was just the beginning, that being consort meant influence, meant power, meant everything he'd ever dreamed of. He had no idea. Crown Princess Se-yeon gestured, and a palace maid approached Taejin, whispering an invitation to meet privately in the palace gardens. He arose with barely suppressed excitement and followed her. I smiled to myself. Let him enjoy these last moments of freedom. Taejin came to visit my family's compound that evening, practically glowing with triumph. "Lady Hae-jin," he found me in the garden where I was reading poetry. "I have wonderful news. I'm to be the crown princess's consort. Can you imagine? My family will be elevated, my future secured." I set down my book and looked at him with carefully neutral expression. "Congratulations, General Kim. That's quite an honor." "Honor?" He laughed. "It's everything. With the crown princess as my wife, I'll have access to the highest levels of power. When she becomes empress, I'll be at her side. The opportunities—" He stopped himself, perhaps realizing how ambitious he sounded. "Of course, it's a duty I'll fulfill with utmost dedication." "Of course," I echoed, "though I hope you understand what the position entails." His smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" "A consort in our dynasty, well, it's different from being a husband in a normal marriage. You'll live in the palace, naturally, attend court functions, manage household affairs." "Yes, and—" He waved dismissively. "That still gives me proximity to power. I can advise the crown princess, help shape policy." "Actually, consorts are barred from holding any government position and from advising on state matters. It's considered improper for a man to overstep his role in the imperial household." The smile froze on his face. "That can't be right. Surely there are exceptions." "I'm afraid not. It's written in the imperial law codes. A consort's role is purely ceremonial and domestic. You'll be very comfortable, of course, well provided for, but your military career ends the moment you're married." Taejin's face went through several shades of pale. "My military career? But I've worked for years to reach my current rank. I'm being considered for promotion to 4th rank. I have campaigns planned." "All of which will have to be abandoned. The crown princess needs a consort who can devote himself entirely to her household and comfort. It wouldn't be proper for you to be away at war or occupied with military duties." For a moment, he just stared at me. Then, quietly, "You knew. When you told me about this tournament, you knew what winning would mean." I met his eyes without flinching. "Everyone knows what consort positions entail, General. Surely you researched before entering such an important competition." His jaw clenched. "I should have. I was so focused on winning, on impressing the crown princess. I didn't think—" He cut himself off, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "It's too late now," I said gently, almost kindly. "You've accepted the imperial decree. To refuse would be treason. You'll marry the crown princess as decreed, and I'm sure you'll find contentment in your new role." "Contentment?" He laughed bitterly. "Is that what they call it?" I stood, brushing off my hanbok. "If you'll excuse me, General, I have other engagements. I wish you every happiness in your marriage." As I walked away, I heard him call after me. "Lady Hae-jin, wait.
I need to ask you something. About us. I had thought perhaps you and I might. I turned back, letting ice creep into my voice. Might what, General? Surely you weren't about to propose a match between us when you're already betrothed to the Crown Princess. That would be quite inappropriate. His mouth opened and closed. Finally, I suppose it would be. Forgive me. I didn't look back again. Over the next weeks, I watched from a distance as Taejin's new reality set in. The wedding preparations were elaborate, befitting a union between military valor and imperial blood. But I noticed how his smile became more strained at each court function, how his eyes followed other military officers with barely concealed envy. Jung Min-ho, meanwhile, received orders to lead a campaign in the Northern Territories. When I saw him before his departure, he sought me out personally. "Lady Park," he said with a deep bow, "I wanted to thank you for the warning. You made your own choice, Captain." "Yes, but you gave me the information to make it wisely." He hesitated, then reached into his robes and pulled out a jade pendant carved with his family's crest. "If you ever need assistance, send this to me. I owe you a debt." I accepted it carefully. "Be safe in your campaign, Captain Jung." "I will. And, Lady Park," his eyes were serious, "if you don't mind my saying, you're too clever and too kind to be wasted on shallow men who can't see your worth." Before I could respond, he was gone.
The royal wedding was spectacular. I attended with my family, watching as Taejin knelt before the Empress and Emperor, as he exchanged ceremonial vows with Crown Princess Sion, as he was officially granted his new title and position. He looked handsome in his consort's robes, deep blue silk embroidered with gold, a far cry from his military uniform. But his eyes, when they swept the crowd, held a desperate quality, like a man watching his dreams slip through his fingers. The crown princess, by contrast, looked radiant. She'd gotten exactly what she wanted, a strong, handsome consort to manage her household and provide her with companionship. She had no idea he'd wanted something entirely different from their union. After the ceremony, during the banquet, I saw Taejin sitting at the high table beside his new wife. Other military officials congratulated him, but there was pity in their eyes. Everyone knew what this position meant. One particularly drunk general clapped Taejin on the shoulder and laughed. "Well, Kim, at least you'll never have to sleep in a military tent again. Leave the fighting to us real soldiers." I watched Taejin's knuckles turn white around his wine cup. The first months of Taejin's marriage passed in a blur of palace functions and ceremonial duties. I heard through court gossip that he was fulfilling his obligations with gritted teeth dedication. The crown princess seemed pleased with him, which only made his situation more inescapable. Then came the day that would change everything. I was visiting a friend in the noble quarter when I passed a tea house and heard a familiar voice. Taejin sat inside with another man, someone I didn't recognize. I moved closer to the window, hidden by the silk screens. "I can't take it anymore," Taejin was saying, his voice raw. "Every day I wake up in that golden cage and die a little inside. Do you know what it's like to watch other men ride off to war while you're stuck planning palace gardens and selecting menu items?" "You knew what you were getting into," the other man said. "I didn't. I was so focused on the prestige, the proximity to power, I didn't realize I'd be neutered. That's what this position is. I'm a neutered show dog." "The crown princess loves you. That should count for something." Taejin laughed bitterly. "She loves the idea of me, the dutiful consort who manages her household and looks good at state functions. But when I try to discuss military strategy or politics, she just pats my hand and tells me not to worry about such things. That's not a consort's concern," she says. "So what will you do?" "I don't know, but I can't live like this forever. I need something that makes me feel like a man again." I pulled back from the window, a cold feeling settling in my chest. I knew where this was going. In my previous life, Taejin had channeled his frustration into bitterness toward me. In this life, with no scapegoat wife to blame,
Where would he direct it? The answer came 3 months later. Rumors began circulating that consort Kim had been seen frequenting a particular establishment in the merchant district. Not a brothel, that would be too scandalous, but a private residence where a beautiful widow named Song Mi Ron held intimate gatherings. I made it my business to learn more. Mi Ron was from a respectable family, young and cultured, known for her poetry and musical skills. She'd lost her husband to illness 2 years prior and lived quietly on her widow's stipend. And apparently, Taejin had been visiting her regularly. The scandal broke when one of Crown Princess Seon's ladies-in-waiting saw Taejin leaving Miran's residence late at night. The news reached the Crown Princess within hours. I was in the palace when it happened, actually, visiting at the Crown Princess's invitation. We'd become closer since the tournament, bonding over shared interests in literature and art. We were discussing calligraphy techniques when a palace maid burst in, breathless and pale. "Your Highness," she gasped, "the consort, there's been a report." Sion set down her brush with careful precision. "Speak plainly." Consort Kim has been observed making repeated visits to a widow's residence in the merchant district at night, often staying for hours. The silence that followed was deafening. Sion's face remained perfectly composed, but her hand trembled slightly as she picked up her teacup. "I see. Thank you for informing me. You may go." The maid fled. "Hyejin," Sion said softly, "would you mind leaving me alone for a moment?" "Of course, Your Highness." I stood to go, then hesitated. "If I may say something." She looked at me with eyes that were trying very hard not to cry. "Whatever action you take, remember that you deserve someone who values your position, your intelligence, and your heart, not someone who sees you as a stepping stone or a cage." Her composure cracked just slightly. "Thank you. That means more than you know."
The investigation was swift and thorough. Palace guards followed Taejin for 3 days, documenting every visit, every late-night departure. They even questioned the neighbors, who testified to seeing consort Kim arrive regularly, always after dark. When confronted, Taejin didn't even bother denying it. The confrontation happened in the Crown Princess's private receiving room. I wasn't there, but my friend Lady Choi was, and she told me everything. "He looked almost relieved," she said, her eyes wide with shock, like he'd been waiting to be caught. The Crown Princess asked him if the rumors were true, and he just said, "Yes, I've been visiting Song Mi Ran. She makes me feel like a person again, instead of a decorative accessory." What did the Crown Princess say? Nothing at first. She just stood there, looking at him like she'd never seen him before. Then she asked if he loved this woman, and he said, Lady Choi's voice dropped to a scandalized whisper. He said, "I don't know if it's love, but she respects me. She asks my opinions on matters of substance. She doesn't treat me like a pet." I closed my eyes, imagining the scene. The Crown Princess ordered guards to seize him. She said he'd violated imperial law, that consorts are forbidden from taking concubines or lovers. It's considered an insult to the imperial family, punishable by severe consequences. How severe? Exile or execution, depending on the empress's mood. The trial was held 3 days later in the Hall of Supreme Harmony. The empress presided, flanked by her ministers and advisors. Taejin knelt in the center of the hall, still wearing his consort's robes, looking oddly calm. Crown Princess Seon stood to present the charges, her voice steady, despite the humiliation she must have felt. Consort Kim Taejin has violated the sacred trust of imperial marriage by conducting an affair with a commoner woman. He has brought shame upon the imperial household and shown contempt for the honor bestowed upon him. I request that your imperial majesty impose the maximum penalty allowed by law. The empress looked at Taejin with cold eyes. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Taejin raised his head. "Only that I accept full responsibility for my actions, Your Imperial Majesty. I sought comfort outside my marriage because I was unhappy.
That's no excuse, merely an explanation. Unhappy? The Empress's voice could have frozen water. You were granted the highest honor possible for a man of your rank, marriage to the crown princess herself, and you were unhappy? With respect, Your Imperial Majesty, I was granted a position that stripped away everything I'd worked my entire life to achieve, my military career, my autonomy, my purpose. All gone, replaced with ornamental duties and ceremonial obligations. I felt like I was suffocating. A shocked murmur ran through the hall. No one spoke to the Empress this way. "So you took a lover?" the Empress said flatly, "because being consort to the future Empress of our empire wasn't fulfilling enough for you." "I took a lover because I needed to feel like a man instead of a decoration, because Song Mi Ran talked to me about strategy and politics and treated me like my thoughts mattered, because in her presence, I wasn't just the crown princess's pretty consort, I was myself." Crown Princess Seon's face had gone deathly pale. I saw her hands clench in her skirts, saw the way she fought to maintain composure. The Empress stood. "You will be stripped of your title as consort. Your family name will be removed from the imperial registry. You will be exiled to the northern frontier, where perhaps military life will remind you of what you so carelessly threw away. As for Song Mi Ren—" "Please," Taejin interrupted, and the audacity of it made everyone gasp. "Please, don't punish her. She didn't know who I was. I told her I was a low-ranking palace official. The fault is entirely mine." "The fault," the Empress said coldly, "is indeed entirely yours. But she knowingly consorted with a married man, regardless of his rank. She will be exiled as well, to a different province. You will never see each other again." Taejin's composure finally cracked. "Your Imperial Majesty, I beg you." "Silence. I've heard enough. Guards, remove him." As guards dragged Taejin from the hall, his eyes swept the crowd one last time. They found mine, and for a moment we looked at each other across the distance. I saw recognition dawn in his expression, understanding, the realization that I'd known all along what this position would cost him, that I'd given him exactly what he wanted in my previous life and let him destroy himself with it. I smiled, just slightly. His eyes widened with something like horror before the guards hauled him away.
Jung Min-ho returned from his northern campaign a month later, covered in glory and newly promoted to third rank. The Empress personally received him at court, praising his tactical brilliance and bravery. I was there for the ceremony, standing among the court ladies. When Min-ho's eyes found mine in the crowd, he smiled, warm and genuine. After the official proceedings, he approached my family's viewing area. "Lady Park," he said with a bow, "it's good to see you again." "Congratulations on your promotion, General Jung. You've earned it." "I hear the Crown Princess is soon to choose a new consort," he said carefully. "They say she's taking her time, being more selective this time. Wise of her." "Indeed." He hesitated. Then, "I also hear that your family has been receiving marriage proposals. Your father mentioned it when I visited him last week to pay my respects." I raised an eyebrow. "You visited my father?" "To ask his permission to court you. Properly this time. Not in secret or through intermediaries, but openly and honorably." His eyes were steady on mine. "If you'll have a soldier who spends more time on campaign than at home, who can't offer you poetry or palace intrigue, but can promise loyalty and honesty." My breath caught. "General Jung." "Min-ho. Please, call me Min-ho." "Min-ho," I said softly. "Why me?" "Because you saw me at that tournament and thought not of what you could gain from me, but of what I would lose. Because you warned a stranger at cost to yourself. Because in a world of people grasping for power and prestige, you value freedom and truth." He smiled. "And because when I think about returning from campaign, I want it to be to you." I thought of Taejin, who'd wanted power and status above all else, who'd seen marriage as a stepping stone rather than a partnership,
who'd blamed me for his own choices and destroyed us both with his bitterness. Then I looked at Manhwa, who'd given up certain victory because he understood himself well enough to know what he truly needed, who'd built his career on merit and honor rather than manipulation. My father approved? I asked. Enthusiastically. Apparently, he's impressed by my recent promotion, though I think he's more impressed that I asked him first instead of trying to use connections or backdoor politics. He would appreciate that. So, Manhwa extended his hand. Will you let me court you properly, Lady Park Hae-jin? Let me earn your trust and your heart through actions rather than words? I placed my hand in his. I'd like that very much, General Jung Manhwa. 1 year later. Our wedding was simple compared to the royal spectacle of Tae-jin's union with the crown princess. No imperial decree, no palace ceremony, just two families joining together with genuine joy and celebration. I wore my crimson wedding hanbok, but this time, as Manhwa smiled at me across the ceremonial table, I knew it was real. Every promise, every vow, every hope for our future together. News reached us a few months after our wedding that Tae-jin had died in the northern frontier, not in battle, but from fever, alone and unmourned. Song Mi-ran had married a merchant in her exile province and seemed content. Crown Princess Se-yeon eventually chose a new consort, a scholar this time, someone gentle and devoted who genuinely wanted the position. They seemed happy together. As for me and Manhwa, he led campaigns and won victories. I managed our household and wrote poetry and sometimes traveled with him when the season allowed. We argued about military strategy over dinner. We planted a garden together. We were building a life based on honesty and respect. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset from our veranda, Manhwa asked me something he'd clearly been wondering about. That day at the tournament, when you warned me about the consort position, how did you know I'd deliberately lose rather than win? I smiled, leaning against his shoulder. I didn't. I just knew you deserved to make an informed choice. What you did with that information was up to you. And if I'd chosen to win anyway, then I would have wished you well and moved on with my life. Everyone deserves to choose their own path, even if it leads to regret. He was quiet for a moment. Then, did you ever love him, Tae-jin? I thought about my previous life, about 3 years of false smiles and hidden hatred, about the moment he'd wrapped his hand around my throat and showed me who he really was. I thought I did, I said honestly, but what I loved was an illusion. The real man, the one driven by ambition and resentment, I'm glad I never wasted my life on him. Manhwa pulled me closer. His loss, my gain. Our gain, I corrected, smiling up at him. He kissed me then, soft and sweet, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the call of cranes taking flight, a symbol of longevity and partnership. This life, this second chance, I'd used it wisely, not for revenge, not for spite, but for truth. I'd given Tae-jin exactly what he wanted and let him discover for himself that ambition without wisdom is just another kind of cage. As for me, I'd found something far more valuable than power or prestige. I'd found freedom and love that was real, and that made all the difference.